Senate bill passes third reading.
And there you go. The third reading has passed, and the crowd is going wild outside. If we could take a look at what's happening there, Meleka Lincoln has been with them. Of course, they've been gathered there since before 10 this morning.
Let's take a moment here and just look at the crowd reacting. Of course, the people celebrating there, the supporters of the same-sex marriage bill. For them, this is the moment of victory. They know from here on out this bill is pretty smooth sailing all the way to the governor's desk, where he is expected to sign it. And if that indeed happens, marriages could start happening in the state December 2nd. Let's go to Meleka Lincoln now. She's at the scene live.
Keahi, Tanya, the mood here absolutely electric. You can hear as the crowd has just erupted in cheers, clapping. We're seeing huggings, we're seeing tears. And this is all happening as they've just learned that SB1, the Hawaii Marriage Equality Act of 2013, which will legalize same-sex marriage in our state, has just passed a third reading in the House of Representatives. Now, this is not the final vote. Because of amendments that took place to expand the religious exemptions within the bill, this bill now does have to cross back over to the Senate. But as we mentioned just moments earlier, the Senate did have very decisive support for this bill when they passed it over to the House earlier last week, which is why it is, in fact, expected to be accepted by the Senate when they get it next week, Tuesday. From there, it will have to go up to the governor. He has been a supporter of same-sex marriage here in the state, so we're certainly anticipating that he will sign that bill right away. As you mentioned, if all of that happens as scheduled, then December 2nd will be the first day that same-sex couples living here in Hawaii will have the opportunity to wed. We'll continue to monitor this coverage, and as you can see, of course, hear more from the very enthusiastic supporters of same-sex marriage. As you can imagine, on the other side of the rotunda, where those who've been chanting all day, "Let the people decide," the emotions are quite different. Disappointed, frustrated. Many of them had hoped that a constitutional amendment would have given them the opportunity on the ballot to vote on this measure. Several attempts and proposals to introduce that in the Hawaii House of Representatives were failed. Now, behind me, you can hear supporters of the same-sex marriage bill shouting, "Love is love." We're certainly hoping that everyone here will continue to treat one another with love and respect now that this decision has been made. We'll have more, of course, of our continuing coverage online and on Twitter. Reporting live from the Capitol, Meleka Lincoln, Hawaii News Now.
Yeah, Meleka, actually, let's keep it going here for a little bit. If you can hear me,
sure.
Turn the camera back over to the opponents on the other side.
Absolutely.
Let's just take a look here. Go full with the video if we can, and see their reaction. It's been a tense day down there for sure, and some of the anxiety here being expressed, understandable. So far, everything's peaceful, a lot of authorities on hand. But I think it's worth talking about the next step for these opponents, because
Agreed.
From their perspective, this is not over. They are already planning a legal challenge. And of course, there's
correct.
a groundswell within this community to try to, frankly, vote out some of the lawmakers who they feel voted the wrong way on this issue.
Yes, that is correct. And in fact, there also has been a constitutional amendment challenge. We mentioned that earlier today. Representative Bob McDermott, who has been a very vocal opponent of SB1, actually sued on the basis of the ballot language in the 1998 amendment that many people said they believed gave them the right to actually have the legislature reserve marriage to only that between a man and a woman. That was not the case. It gave the legislature the right to eventually define marriage as they see fit, which is why McDermott has sued in hopes that that will be overturned. And if that's the case, then this challenge, of course, as it will be taken up in the courts, could leave many more unanswered questions, which is why we're going to be very closely following this. In the meantime, the disappointment, the prayer circle that has gathered for opponents of same-sex marriage to counter it on the side of those who have been supporting and asking for same-sex marriage. They've just broken into song, many of them with their hands in the air, waving their rainbow flags, holding hands, singing Hawaii Honoi and Hawaii Aloha, another song now that they've broken into. Earlier we heard them singing Amazing Grace. The celebration for them, very emotional, and you can see the tears in many people's eyes, but we'll let you take a listen. mention, the third reading, having passed just moments ago through the House, is not a final vote on same-sex marriage. For those who want a little bit more clarity on what happens next, we can tell you for a fact that because of the amendments that were made to Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, which just passed, does require approval by the Senate. It is expected to cross over to them first thing Tuesday morning because they don't conduct official business on the weekends, and since Monday is Veterans Day, on Tuesday, there is the possibility that senators will accept Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, exactly as it is written. There's also the possibility that they will not. And if that's the case, conference committee will be expected, and that would be a joint conference committee meeting between both House representatives and senators in which they will sit together to try to address any concerns that may still exist within the language of the bill. Conference committee does take a little bit more time. At this time, it's not clear if that will happen. We also don't know who the conference committee conferees would be. Those would be selected by the House Judiciary and Finance Committee chairs, along with the Senate Judiciary Committee chair, and that's just one possibility. That said, when we spoke with Senator He yesterday about the chances of that happening, he reiterated for us that while he cannot speak on behalf of the entire Senate, he does truly believe that many senators will think that the weight of allowing for equal rights and marriage equality outweighs that of the religious exemption carve-outs that have been created for this bill. And it's on that basis that he told us just yesterday in an exclusive interview with Hawaii News Now that he does anticipate that same-sex marriage will become a law here in Hawaii next week. It just needs the governor's signature once it gets through the Senate. Again, quite the scene here at the Capitol. Yes, Tanya?
Well, you have been here since the special session got underway for 2 weeks, covering it from gavel to gavel, beginning of the day to the nighttime, and all that raw emotion, the controversy, the long waits for testimony. How would you characterize the mood that you've been seeing throughout the day today as this final vote came?
You know, my goodness, I want to start first by saying that when they made the decision to divide the rotunda, also Beretania, also inside the chambers, where opponents would have one section and supporters would have their own section, I think that that really did an amazing job in keeping the peace. That said, there were a lot of people who commented on how sad it was, mentioning several times throughout the day this sense of separate but equal. You could feel the hope of so many who were here wishing that same-sex marriage would in fact make its way through this next hurdle. You could feel the frustration and the disappointment of so many who came here in opposition, who were just so worried about the potential impacts of this legislation. Those who have been chanting, "Let the people decide." Right now, the corner that we're standing in is certainly very jubilant, but we'd be remiss if we did not mention the hanging heads, the very quiet reflection that's taking place on the other side of the rotunda, where you can see they have gathered also holding hands, but feeling quite differently tonight. I can certainly say that lawmakers are exhausted as I have listened to them. Each have their opportunity to address their fellow legislatures, and this is a passionate, polarizing issue. One thing that every single person has said is that they do hope that this community can come together and heal now that all of this is said and done. So we'll certainly be hoping for that as well as we watch this developing story. Nothing is a done deal yet. Reporting live from the Capitol, Mileka Lincoln, Hawaii News Now.
Well said, Mileka. Nice work out there. We'll take a short break and continue with more on the typhoon and other news after this.
Big story tonight, the passage of Senate Bill 1, same-sex marriage. Mileka Lincoln has been covering this for us.
She's live for us. Mileka, who do you have?
Kahi, right now we're about to speak to Nick LaCar, one of the supporters of the same-sex marriage bill. Define this moment for me.
It's just monumental. It's history. My partner and I waited 30 years for this. I can't even explain how joyous it is, and I think that it's just going to be an incredible thing for all of Hawaii, and I think that a lot of couples will be able to now rejoice in their love, and I'm looking forward to getting married.
Wonderful, Nick. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, Nick, just one of the hundreds of supporters of the same-sex marriage bill who's now celebrating here in the Capitol Rotunda after news that the Hawaii House of Representatives has passed out SB1 HD1, which is an amended version of the bill that initially came out of the Senate with a few more religious expansions and exemptions. We also at this time want to call up Michael Galoya, who's one of the biggest advocates for the same-sex marriage battle. What does it mean to you that this has happened, and do you believe that this was able to balance your equal rights with religious protections, one of the greatest concerns from opponents?
It was, but as you can see, they were never going to be happy. So I don't know why they amended it, but we're happy to be able to move forward. Hopefully that will give them some solace, and that the Senate will agree to those amendments and we can move forward quickly and get this bill signed and get it into law.
Tell me what that moment was like when you heard the news.
It was awe-inspiring. All the work is paid off. It lifted a huge burden off our shoulders, knowing that families are going to be taken care of. Our state's going to be able to move forward and count ourselves amongst the free states yet again.
And now I'd be remiss if I don't circle back and one more time remind everyone at home that this was just the third reading in the House. This is not a final vote on the same-sex marriage bill. It does still need to advance over to the Senate, where they'll take it up. And if they don't want to make any changes to the amended version that just passed through the House, it will at that point go up to the governor for a signature. Keahi, Tanya?
Thanks, Milaka.